When stillness enters the room, there is a kind of discipline that tightens a room. You arrive early. Your posture is set. Breath slow, shoulders quiet. Others notice before they understand. Conversations shorten. Jokes land flat. You are not severe, you are simply unmoving, and that stillness presses on them. Most people believe discipline is fuel. They chase it when inspired and abandon it when the body resists. You watch the pattern repeat, the notebook fills, the alarm rings once, then the excuses gather warmth. Not weakness. Negotiation. The body waits for permission and never receives it. Ancient warriors knew another path. Training began without mood. Hands moved while the mind complained. Cold air burned the lungs, feet stepped anyway. Over time the choice vanished. What remains unsettles others because it removes their favorite refuge. Before you continue, write the habit you quietly renegotiate each morning. One line. No reasons. No witnesses. No delay. Today, he looked prepared before anyone asked. Let me tell you about someone like you. He arrived before the lights were fully on. Shoes placed side by side. Jacket folded the same way each time. The floor was cold through thin socks. He stood there anyway, breath settling, pulse steadying. Others drifted in late, rubbing eyes, laughing about traffic. They noticed him without wanting to. Silence bent around his outline. He was sharp. Read everything. Talked plans easily. The body showed promise, strong legs, capable hands. But every few weeks the pattern broke. Missed sessions turned into gaps. Gaps turned into explanations. He watched himself bargain while tying his laces, just today, just this once. The laces loosened as the thought warmed. Someone joked, rest days matter. He smiled and nodded, shoulders easing, already leaving the room. Another morning. The alarm cut the dark. Dry mouth. Heavy eyelids. The phone glowed with messages. He sat on the bed, spine curved, thumb hovering. The body waited for permission. Outside, a neighbor's door closed, footsteps passed without him. He felt the dull ache of legs not used, the heat behind the eyes from a night too long. He told himself he'd double it tomorrow. Tomorrow nodded back. Weeks later, the room changed. He stopped explaining. Shoes were laid out the night before. The belt was tied before the mind started bargaining. Cold air filled the lungs, fingers stiffened, the body moved before consent. When rain came, training shifted indoors without comment. When exhaustion rose, pace dropped but time remained. He still felt resistance, tight shoulders, a dull throb in the calves, but the response was already chosen. People noticed again. Invitation softened. "You're too rigid," someone said, half smiling. He knelt on the mat without ceremony, knees folding the same way, hands wrapping the handle the same way. Breath counts returned when the mind resisted. A laugh rippled behind him. He did not turn. The repetition had no drama. It had weight. At work, he left at the same hour. Not early, not late. Colleagues watched the clock, then him. Jokes followed. Then fewer jokes. His calendar became predictable, and predictability unsettled them. He felt it in small frictions, the pause before a question, the shrug when plans bent around his absence. Heat crept behind the eyes, pulse steadied. He kept the line. The discomfort wasn't loud. It lived in glances and half-invitations. In the way people defended their choices when he said nothing at all. He never argued. The floor was cold, he knelt anyway. The river did not stop flowing when it thinned. It continued, quietly cutting its path, and the room felt it. The rule was old before he learned it. In the monastery, the bell rang before dawn whether anyone listened or not. Cold air pulled along the stone corridor. Bare feet met the floor, skin reacted to morning. A monk rose without checking how he felt. The body already knew the route. Others followed, robes brushing walls, breath fogging, eyes half open. No one asked why. The question had been removed generations ago. He visited once. Not as a seeker, just passing through. He watched the same movements repeat. Hands poured tea the same way. Knees folded onto the mat without ceremony. Steam rose, wrists burned, the cup was lifted anyway. A visitor whispered that it looked restrictive. The monk smiled politely and continued. The restriction was the point, though no one said it aloud. Back home, mornings were louder. Phones chimed. Plans competed. He noticed how choice multiplied friction. Each decision scraped energy away. He tested something small. Fixed time. Fixed action. No creativity. Shoes waited by the door. The alarm rang. Heavy eyelids. Dry mouth. He stood before the mind assembled arguments. The body moved first. The mind arrived late, irritated. Friends noticed the shift before he named it. "You're intense lately," someone said over coffee. The cup warmed his palms, shoulders stayed loose. He nodded and changed the subject. At dinner, he left early again. Chairs scraped. Someone joked about balance. He smiled, paid, and stepped into the cold. Breath tightened, then lengthened. The streetlight flickered. He walked. The rule was simple and old. When rain fell, training moved indoors without thought. When fatigue appeared, intensity dropped, not time. When the schedule broke, the next available slot was used immediately. No recovery stories. No negotiations. The body learned the response like a reflex. Pulse steadied faster. Heat behind the eyes cooled sooner. Repetition did the work quietly. At the gym, a stranger asked his routine. He shrugged. There wasn't one worth describing. Same hour. Same start. Same end. Hands wrapped the bar the same way. Calluses thickened. The floor smelled of rubber and disinfectant. A man nearby skipped a set to check his phone. He felt the familiar pull, joined them, lightened the mood. He tightened his grip and lifted. The weight left the ground without commentary. Social friction sharpened. Invitations came with disclaimers. "I know you won't," they said, preemptively. He heard relief mixed with annoyance. His calendar looked empty to them, full to him. Evenings shortened. Mornings widened. Sleep deepened. The body expected the next step and felt wrong when it didn't arrive. He didn't feel powerful. He felt ordinary in a narrower lane. The lane removed choice, and with it, the daily collapse. Others felt exposed by the absence of excuses. They filled the silence with explanations. He offered none. The bell rang somewhere long ago, he answered now, and the room felt smaller for it. Negotiation is where mornings collapse. Most mornings didn't fail loudly. They thinned. The alarm sounded and the room stayed dim. Heavy eyelids pressed back. Dry mouth. The body lay still while the mind assembled reasons. Just today. Just this once. The negotiation felt gentle, almost kind. That was the danger. He noticed how the body changed during these talks. Shoulders tightened. Breath shortened. The pulse wandered. The floor waited, cold and patient. When he finally stood, minutes had leaked away. At work, someone mentioned traffic. Another laughed about being tired. He joined the chorus once, feeling the small warmth of belonging. The warmth faded quickly. He tested silence instead. The alarm rang. He swung his legs over the bed before thought arrived. Feet met the floor, skin reacted to morning. The body moved while the mind protested. Cold air burned the lungs, breath lengthened anyway. By the time the mind formed a sentence, the door was already closed behind him. The negotiation had missed its window. The difference was physical. On days he debated, the body felt scattered, tight neck, dull ache in the legs. heat behind the eyes that wouldn't settle. On days he moved first, the pulse steadied sooner. Muscles warmed predictably. The river flowed even when it was thin. He began to trust the sensation more than the story. Social pressure followed him into these moments. Messages lit the phone mid-warm-up. A friend asked if he could push training later. Another sent a joke. He felt the familiar tug to respond, to explain. Fingers hovered. He set the phone face down. Hands wrapped the bar the same way. The set began. A man nearby watched, waiting for a pause. There wasn't one. At lunch, the questions arrived. How do you keep it up? He was asked, fork tapping the plate. He chewed, swallowed, shrugged. There was nothing to keep up. The rule had already answered. The table went quiet. Someone changed the subject. He felt the subtle accusation in the air, must be nice. He felt the weight of his own legs under the table, steady and present. The internal war didn't end. It lost influence. Resistance still appeared, stiff fingers in winter, tight hips, a yawn that split the jaw. The response was pre-decided. When exhaustion appeared, intensity dropped. When schedule broke, the next slot was used immediately. No drama. No compensation. Continuity held the line. Others sensed the shift. They felt it when he declined without apology. When he arrived early and left on time. When he didn't narrate effort. Their discomfort grew in the gaps where explanations used to live. He felt it too, briefly, like pressure before a storm. Then the body moved, and the pressure passed, leaving the question hanging in the room. The one way leaves no room. He learned to narrow the path until it could not be argued with. One way in. One way out. The door opened at the same hour. Shoes waited. The floor was cold, he stepped anyway. Breath caught, then settled. The mind arrived late, irritated to find nothing left to decide. This was not rigidity. It was relief. Choice had been draining him in small cuts. Each morning used to begin with a menu. Now it began with motion. Hands wrapped the handle the same way. Knees bent to the same depth. The body recognized the sequence and followed it without ceremony. Sweat formed. Muscles warmed. The pulse found its rhythm and stayed there. People misunderstood the quiet. They thought discipline meant intensity. They watched him reduce weight on tired days and assumed weakness. They didn't see the line he refused to cross. Time stayed. Continuity stayed. When exhaustion rose, intensity dropped, never presence. He felt the dull ache in the legs and adjusted pace without comment. Someone nearby skipped entirely. He nodded and kept moving. At home, the system held. Meals repeated. Sleep arrived on time. The phone stayed outside the room. Fingers twitched the first nights. Dry mouth. A glance toward the dark screen. He turned away. The body learned faster than the mind. Dreams deepened. Mornings sharpened. He woke before the alarm, skin reacting to dawn, already standing. Social friction thickened around the edges. Friends asked for flexibility. Just this once, they said, smiling. He heard the echo of his old mornings. Heat rose behind the eyes. He breathed it down and declined without explanation. Chairs scraped. Someone sighed. He felt the weight of their disappointment and let it pass through his shoulders without lodging. At work, deadlines pressed. A late meeting crept toward his training hour. He left on time anyway. The hallway felt longer that day. A colleague raised an eyebrow. He felt the familiar pull to justify, to trade tomorrow for today. The rule answered first. Fixed time. Fixed action. The elevator doors closed. His pulse steadied as they descended. The one-way exposed people. They felt accused by his absence of excuses. They filled the space with stories, about balance, about seasons of life. He listened without nodding. The floor was cold, he knelt anyway. Repetition stacked quietly, day on day, until it became heavier than motivation ever was. He didn't feel heroic. He felt aligned. The path had narrowed enough to carry him forward without persuasion. Others felt the pressure of that narrowing when they stood near it. They stepped back, unsettled, sensing that if they stepped in, something would be demanded of them they were not ready to give. Continuity holds when perfection fails. There were days the body arrived already cracked. Sleep cut short. A dull ache behind the knees. Fingers stiff, slow to close. He stood on the mat and felt the gap between what he wanted and what was there. The gap used to send him home. Now it narrowed without ceremony. He shortened the session without announcing it to himself. Fewer sets. Slower steps. The floor stayed cold. Breath still counted. The river thinned and kept moving. A man nearby watched him stop early and smirked, relieved. He felt the invitation to quit entirely, to match the room. He wiped his hands, nodded once, and left. The chain remained unbroken. At home, sickness came quietly. Fever warmth pulled behind the eyes. Shoulders sagged. He sat anyway. Spine upright. Breath shallow, then steadier. 5 minutes. Then done. The body registered the signal. Even ill, the line existed. The next day felt less heavy for it. People misread this restraint. They thought discipline meant max effort, visible strain. They expected collapse on bad days. When he adjusted instead, their stories lost traction. If I were you, someone said, I'd just rest. He listened. The comment hung between them. He felt the weight of his own legs, the steadiness in his feet. He didn't argue. He trained lightly the next morning and left on time. Continuity reshaped his sense of failure. Missing once no longer became a cliff. When a meeting ran long and the window closed, he used the next available slot immediately. 10 minutes. 20. Enough to keep the current moving. Sweat cooled on his skin as he stepped back into the day. The body recognized the return and settled. Social friction sharpened here. Friends praised intensity but dismissed consistency. They celebrated dramatic starts and ignored quiet returns. He felt the pressure to perform discipline, to make it visible. He refused. Hands wrapped the handle the same way. Knees folded onto the mat without ceremony. The repetition spoke for him in a language most people didn't want to learn. Over weeks, the body adapted to the rule. Recovery improved. Sleep deepened. The pulse steadied faster after stress. He noticed how skipping used to create a lingering itch, a restlessness that bled into conversations. Now the itch appeared when he didn't show up, even briefly. Discipline had inverted. Absence felt wrong. Others sensed the shift without naming it. They joked less. They stopped asking how. His routine became predictable, and predictability unsettled them. It removed the drama they used to excuse themselves. He felt their discomfort like pressure at the edge of a storm, then felt it pass as he kept the line, unbroken and quiet. Response is chosen before pressure arrives. He stopped trusting moments of stress. They were loud, persuasive, and temporary. Instead, he decided responses in advance, when the body was calm and the room was empty. The rule waited quietly, like a blade sheathed within reach. When rain came, shoes stayed dry by the door and training moved inside without thought. The air smelled different, dust, metal, old wood, but the sequence remained. Hands wrapped the handle the same way. Knees bent. Breath counted. The body adjusted before the mind finished noticing the change. Outside, messages arrived about canceling plans. He felt the brief lift of permission and let it pass. When work exploded unexpectedly, shoulders tightened and heat rose behind the eyes. The old version of him would have postponed, explained, promised a double session later. Now the response was already written. Shortened window. Reduced load. Same start. Same end. He trained while the problem waited. When he returned, the pulse had steadied enough to think clearly. A colleague watched him leave earlier than expected and frowned. He felt the friction and didn't polish it. Hunger tested him too. Late evenings. Empty kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator. He ate what was prepared or went to bed. The body complained briefly, tight jaw, hollow ache, then settled. The next morning arrived cleaner for it. At breakfast, someone joked about his monk phase. He felt the warmth of the cup in his hands and said nothing. The joke landed without a target. These pre-decisions shortened recovery. Stress no longer lingered as long. The body learned the exits. When exhaustion appeared, intensity dropped. When injury whispered, movement slowed instead of stopping. The chain stayed intact. He noticed how quickly others collapsed when plans broke. They stood still, scanning for permission. He moved. Social discomfort sharpened at the edges of these moments. Friends felt managed by his predictability. "You always do the same thing," they said, half accusing. He nodded. The sameness was deliberate. It removed the theater of choice. It exposed how often they relied on chaos to justify delay. At the gym, a man asked why he didn't push harder. He felt the weight in his hands, the steady breath, the quiet burn in the muscles. He answered by racking the bar and leaving on time. The man watched him go, confused. The rule had spoken without words. Pre-decided responses made him less interesting and more reliable. Invitations adjusted around him. Some disappeared. He felt the loss briefly, tight chest, shallow breath, then felt it loosen as the body moved into its familiar sequence. The floor was cold, he knelt anyway. The pressure arrived and found no argument waiting, only action already underway, when your body moves without permission. At some point, the shift stopped announcing itself. There was no moment of triumph. No clean line between before and after. One morning, the alarm sounded and his body stood before the thought formed. Feet met the floor. Skin reacted to cold. Breath lengthened on its own. The mind arrived to find the work already underway. This unsettled people more than effort ever did. Effort invited empathy. Automatic movement did not. At the gym, he warmed up while others debated. A man laughed about needing motivation. Someone else blamed the weather. He felt the familiar tightness in his calves ease as heat spread. Hands wrapped the handle the same way. He didn't look up. Friends noticed how little he spoke about it. No stories. No struggles shared. At dinner, someone asked how he stayed consistent. The question hovered, expecting a method. He chewed, swallowed, and said nothing useful. The table shifted. Someone filled the space with a joke. He felt the mild accusation and the laughter, "Must be nice to be like that." The identity had crossed a line. Training was no longer something he protected, it was something others navigated around. Invitations came with caveats or not at all. He felt the social cost in small ways: missed gatherings, shortened conversations, the pause before someone asked a favor. The cost landed in the chest briefly, then passed as the body moved into its sequence. At work, pressure rose before deadlines. Others paced, talked faster, stayed late. He left on time. Not defiantly. Precisely. The hallway felt longer again. A colleague watched him go and shook their head. He felt the heat behind the eyes and breathed it down. The rule held. The next morning arrived clean. He noticed a new sensation when he missed nothing. Not pride. Alignment. The body felt wrong when the sequence didn't happen, even briefly. Rest days still existed, but they were decided, not stolen. When injury whispered, movement adjusted without drama. When sickness came, he sat briefly and left. The chain mattered more than the length. People around him felt exposed by this quiet inevitability. They defended themselves in his presence without being asked. They explained why they couldn't. He listened without nodding. The floor was cold, he knelt anyway. Repetition continued to stack, heavy and silent. This was the point where discipline stopped looking like a practice and started looking like a boundary. Not one he enforced on others, but one they felt when standing near him. The discomfort sharpened because it asked a question without words: if he doesn't negotiate, why do you? The body answered first, as it always did now, and the room felt the pressure of that answer without knowing where it came from. The line you stop crossing. Discipline is not something you summon in moments of strength. It is something that remains when strength is unavailable. By the end, nothing feels heroic about it. The body simply knows where it goes next. The floor is cold. You kneel anyway. Breath tightens. Then steadies. The sequence continues without asking how you feel about it. This is why people grow uncomfortable around you. Not because you are extreme, but because you are settled. You don't perform effort. You don't negotiate out loud. Your calendar doesn't bend for moods. That quiet consistency presses on the places where others still bargain with themselves. They feel it as judgment, even when you offer none. The strongest person in the room is rarely the loudest or the most intense. It is the one whose body no longer waits for permission. The one who leaves on time. Who arrives early. Who adjusts without collapsing. The one who has removed choice where choice only caused delay. By now, you felt it shift. The discomfort moves outward. What once lived inside you, hesitation, explanation, rehearsal, now appears in others. They explain themselves to you without being asked. They joke. They deflect. You stand there, ordinary and unmoved, and the room changes around you. Discipline, at this level, is not a habit. It is a boundary. One you cross once, then never again. If you're still negotiating, stop reading. Comment your public commitment. One sentence. No explanation. No context. Just the action.